Welcome to Getting Started on Your Pre-Health Track Academic Requirements. Today we'll be going over the academic requirements for the pre-health paths for physician assistant, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and nursing. The first thing that you need to be considering when you're looking at going down one of these pre-health tracks is the prerequisite coursework required for your path. So to review for these four pathways, we'll go over the prerequisite courses for each one. For physician assistant, generally you're going to be wanting 2 semesters of general biology. At Fullerton, this would be Bio 151 and 152, 2 semesters of general chemistry, Chem 120A and 120B, 1 semester of organic chemistry, the Chem 301A lecture and the 306A lab, 1 semester of genetics, which would be Bio 251, 1 semester of microbiology, which you could do our upper division 302 and the 302 lab, or our lower division Bio 202. 1 semester of physiology, which will be Bio 362, is our upper division physiology for the biological sciences major. We also have an upper division physiology Bio 310 and its accompanying lab. You can also choose to do the lower division integrated anatomy and physiology sequence of kinesiology 191A and 191B. If you do choose this path, you do need to complete both 191A and 191B to receive full credit for anatomy and physiology. And for anatomy, we do also have an upper division Bio 361, which meets credit for the biological sciences major. Also, typically 1 semester of statistics, elementary statistics, Math 120 is fine. Or if your major has a statistics course, for example, our public health and kines majors do 349, that would also meet requirements. And finally, some non-science prerequisites tend to include Psych 101, Soc 101, and Spanish 101, sometimes even Spanish 102, a second semester of Spanish. For physical therapy, you'll see the 2 semesters of Gen Bio and Gen Chem are the same. However, we also need general physics, which is going to be 211 and 212 with the respective labs. The same as for PA goes with physiology and anatomy, right? We've got upper division and lower division options, but you need 2 semesters regardless of what path you take. Behavioral sciences are a little different here. Instead of having the SOC component, here we have Psych 101, and then typically either an abnormal psych or a developmental psych. Our abnormal psych here is psychological disorders, but it meets the requirement, and that's the 341 course, or Psych 361, which is our developmental psychology. On to nursing and occupational therapy. You can see there's fewer prerequisites here. For nursing, typically 1 semester of integrated chemistry is required. This is going to be a chemistry course that incorporates inorganic, organic, and biological chemical principles. So our Chem 200 course would meet that requirement. Also microbiology, right? Here, I recommend doing the Bio 202, our lower division one. To get to the upper division, there are a lot of prerequisites that you don't necessarily need going pre-nursing, so that 202 tends to be the better fit. Anatomy and physiology, again, you can take the upper division ones if you meet the prerequisites. However, it's more likely that you'll pursue the Kines 191A and 191B path. Again, the same thing for statistics, right? Major course is fine, Math 120 is fine. And behavioral sciences, we recommend Psych 101 and Soc 101. Some schools will also say like a cultural anthropology or an ethnic studies course is okay instead of that Soc 101, but I would recommend doing Soc 101. It meets more program requirements. And for occupational therapy, here again, we see the physiology and anatomy. I would recommend the lower division series for this. And here, just like with PT, we do see those upper division psych courses being required, but for OT, you need both abnormal and developmental. And again, the same goes for the statistics. So we talked about, what the prerequisites are for these different programs, but a lot of these courses also have prerequisites before you can even take them here. So we're going to review what those courses are, what the prereqs for them are, and then kind of take a look at, what the different course sequences look like and where you might start and progress through these courses. So for our general chemistry course, the 120A, You do first need to have Chem 115 or have passed our chemistry placement exam. If you have recently taken Chem 100 and done really well in it, if you did the chemistry AP test recently and you did very well in it, then I might recommend taking the Chem placement exam. But I really strongly recommend that you be honest and realistic with yourself about whether you have that chemistry basis you need to, do as well as you can in these chemistry courses moving forward. So I generally recommend, just taking Chem 115, but the Chem placement exam is an option. You can find that on the chemistry department's website, or honestly, just by Googling CSUF chemistry placement exam. It's offered most months in the semester. You're allowed to take it once in a 12-month period. There are study materials, so you can kind of, refresh your memory, but there's no fee to sign up for it. There's no like penalty if you don't pass, right? So can consider taking that. For Chem 200, there's no technical prerequisite. However, Chem 100 is strongly recommended. And I'll just kind of, reiterate what I said. Make sure you have a strong basis. Be honest with yourself and where your your chemistry knowledge is. For Bio 202, this is the lower division microbio course. Your prerequisites here are going to be Bio 101 and either Kinase 191A or Bio 151. One note about this course too is that it is only offered here in the spring. The next is our genetics course, Bio 251. You do need to have both semesters of general biology as well as your first semester of general chemistry. Moving into our upper division, microbio, anatomy, and physiology. Before we can take these, we need to have completed the genetics course and the second semester of Gen Chem. For the first course in the lower division anatomy physiology series, Kinase 191A, you're going to need a 3.0 GPA and a minimum of 30 units on your transcript at the time of registration. So even if at the end of your, freshman, spring semester, you're going to have 30 units, right? If you don't have 30 units reflected when you register, you won't be able to register. Next, our Physics 211. Our physics courses offered here are calculus-based. There's no specific requirement by most PT programs that your physics be calculus-based. You can opt to take this at a community college. You can take an algebra-based physics or a trig-based physics, but if you're taking them here, you do need to take calculus first. So we have two pathways for that. Math 130, which is our calculus for life sciences. It is the one I tend to recommend for students on these pre-health pathways. But you can also do our Math 150A. If you do Math 130, you need to either take Math 115, college algebra, or Math 125, pre-calculus. If you do Math 150A, you need to take the Math 125 pre-calc. Okay. So now that we know the prereqs and the prereqs to the prereqs, how do we get started, right? I think it's helpful to think of these as sequences, right? So we have our chem sequence, our bio sequence, our physics sequence, right? So the chem sequence for PA and PT, right? We're going to start with that Chem 115 or the Chem placement exam. Then we can move on to 120A, 120B, and 301A. For our PA bio sequence, we would go with 151, 152, genetics, and then our upper division, anatomy, physio, micro. For physics, again, we can start with either the 115 or 125. Depending on what you took there, you can, choose your calculus, your 130 or 150A, then on to physics 211 with the lab and 212 with the lab. For the lower division anatomy physiology, again, we have to have that 3.0 or 30 units. Then we can move on to Kinase 191A and 191B. If we're going to do our lower division microbio, I usually recommend doing Bio 101 first, then taking the Kinase 191A and taking the Bio 202. For our chem, again, strongly recommend that Chem 100, and then move on to Chem 200. And then for our psych courses, if you are doing the upper division abnormal and developmental here, you do first have to take Psych 101. So you can kind of see that there's a progression here, right? We might do Chem 115 and Bio 151 the first semester, then Chem 120A and Bio 152 the next semester. Then we can move on to Chem 120B and our genetics, right? We don't have to take them in this exact order. right? Every single semester, but it's helpful to kind of see, which courses have to come first before we can take the next courses. Another small note about our bio courses, the 151 and 152, they are non-sequential. So you can take either one first. You could take 152 before 151 if you want to. You just can't take them together. So it is going to take 2 semesters. Some final notes on these prerequisites. Anything that you see here that's a 100 or a 200 level, right? So it's most of these courses can be done at a community college. However, you cannot have any online labs. This is particularly relevant for our Bio 151 course. There are online sections of this offered, so just be really aware of that when you are registering, that you need to have an in-person lab. Now, if you can find a hybrid version where the lecture is online and the lab is in person, that's fine. But you do need to have an in-person lab for all of these science courses. Another thing, your anatomy and physiology needs to have a lab as well. And if it's an integrated course, which means in one semester you're studying both anatomy and physio, there needs to be a second semester of that course in order for it to get you credit for both. And finally, chem and bio course registration, particularly for like the Gen Chem and Gen Bio series, is held for registration each semester for majors only, so like NSM majors only, until the end of the standard registration appointment period. You can contact each department, so the chemistry and the bio department respectively, for more information on when registration will open each semester to non-majors. So if you are not a biological sciences or a biochem major, there's not a ton of overlap with these prerequisite courses and your major. However, there are still some ways to fit these into your GEs. So for the 2A, for your quantitative reasoning one, that math 120, your statistics, or if you're doing the physics path, your math 115, your college algebra. 3A, for your humanities, you can put in your Spanish 101. 4A, for your social sciences, lower division, we can do Psych 101, Social 101. For your upper division, quantitative reasoning, if you did your Math 115 for your lower division quantitative reasoning, this is where you can fill in the statistics. So your Math 338 or Social 303 in this category would fit that. If you are part of a major that has a statistics course, an upper division stats course, that's usually where this falls as well. Your upper division social science, that Psych 341 is going to meet that requirement. And then in your physical and life sciences GE categories here, your 5A, so your Chem 120A, 5B, Bio 151, and 5C, Chem 120A or Bio 151, the lab from either of those will meet that requirement. So this is just a good way to think about, if you haven't yet filled some of these GE areas, you can kind of reserve them for these courses so you can reduce the number of overall courses you're needing to take. And last but not least, in addition to these prerequisite courses, there are other general academic requirements and guidelines. And a big one of these is GPA. So generally a 3.0 cumulative GPA, 3.0 science and math GPA is the minimum. However, to be completely honest, with a really strong application in your extracurriculars and your clinical hours, right, you might be able to get away with like a 3.5 at a minimum. But to be really truly competitive, you're looking at kind of a 3.7 or higher. Now, let's say you're falling at a 3.2 cumulative because you had some stumbles when you first started. Maybe you took some classes in high school and didn't realize that they would, come in and transfer into your cumulative GPA. Admissions committees also will look at the last 60 units of your academic performance to look at your academic trend, right? So if you have a really strong last 60 and a strong science and math, that can sometimes help to offset a lower cumulative. And the same is true for test scores, right? So if we have a lower GPA, right, but a really strong GRE, that can sometimes help offset that academic concern as well. That kind of leads us into talking about tests. So for the careers that we're talking about today, the most applicable test is going to be the GRE, the graduate record exam. For nursing, you do have to complete the TEAS. So for the GRE, you really are going to want to study for we recommend like 4 to 6 months, allotting, 6 to 8 hours a week for that. Definitely recommend getting yourself a book if it's within your means, attend a class. Um, Studying for this is as much studying the test itself as it is studying the content on the test. So, really making sure that you're doing practice tests, you're putting yourself in, as close to a mock texting or testing environment as possible to get yourself where you need to be mentally as well as knowledge wise. Excuse me. And finally, um, everything that we went over, prerequisites, all that stuff, this is general, right? This covers a majority of programs. But, some programs may require less, some might require different things, more specific things, more things. So it's always good to check with your specific program of interest to make sure you are meeting all academic requirements. This can include dates that you have to have all of your prerequisites completed by, right? Some are going to require you to have them all at the time of application. Some are going to be okay with them being done, the fall before, and some can even extend it out till spring, right? Some need, all your science ones done at the time of application, but, the other ones can be in progress. So it's important to make sure that you're, kind of tracking which programs require what, and when they need to be done, so that you can make sure that you're meeting all those academic requirements. If you have any questions, you can email hpadvising@fullerton.edu. That's our office number. But otherwise, thank you for attending today, and follow up with any questions.